everybody. Welcome back to the Groomed.Connect podcast. Mike Donahue and Brian May. Say hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
we are, we are, it's a Sunday afternoon. I'm in Kearney, Nebraska, and it's beautiful here. How's the weather out there?
It's a little windy,
Yeah.
a little overcast. Probably going to get some more rain, like we
Yeah.
need more rain.
Yeah. Well, we do actually. So, hey, thank you for getting on this podcast. And this podcast is dedicated, by the way, not to slamming people and exposing people. We've had some feedback that we're attacking everybody, but really we're just trying to talk about the truth. And today I'm going to actually talk a little bit about my truth. But first of all, before we get into that, I want to address something. There's been some chatter on different Facebook pages and social media chatter about uh, the book Groomed. So the book this podcast is out. This book I put out, Groomed. There's been some chatter about me lying, me making up stories, me making things up in the book. So I just want to be clear about something. First of all, I did send this book out to 30 people that were involved in my life, 30-ish people that were involved in my life at certain points in my life, and going back to Boston all the way through to today, and let people read it and give me feedback. And based on the feedback that I got from people, um, I did change some things. There was some things I wasn't accurate about in the first drafts, only because I just didn't know, or I thought something different than what really happened. So I did make those changes. I sent it to my ex-wife. I sent it to my kids. I sent it to good friends and said, hey, look at this. Tell me what I'm not saying. Tell me what I am saying that's wrong. And, all that. So I feel pretty confident that I did my due diligence and trying to gather the facts the best I could. I did omit some things that would have put some other people in a bad light, some of the victims that did not want me to share certain stories because they just weren't ready yet. And that's totally fine. And so I did take those out or never really put them in. So I want to make that really clear that I tried to do that. And if there are things that are not factual in the book, that you think they're not, I'm certainly willing to listen to you. I think airing out on Facebook is probably not the best way to do it, but you certainly can call me or email me and let me know what you think. And so far, I've got nothing but great reviews and people piling on and saying, yeah, me too, me too. And there also has been some things that have come out that are, you know, also covering up things that had happened. And that was the idea in the book, from the very beginning, was to help people find their story in this and give them a voice to tell their story so they can come clean. And not just with the people that we mentioned in the book, but a lot of people have their own experience with hurt and pain from church experiences and things like that. So we want to give those people a voice. This podcast and the book is dedicated to the victims and to helping people recover from their situations. Also, I knew that when I put this book out, and I really did know this, that when I did, there were going to be people that were going to try to shoot the messenger. I totally understand that. I knew I was going to get mud thrown back at me, and I knew what some of those specific things were going to be because I'm human and I know I've made mistakes. And so I've gotten some hits, and I've tried to make it clear that I'm willing to sit with people and have conversations with them about those specific things. In fact, tomorrow I'm getting in a car and I'm driving out to Colorado to sit with a couple that I know my leadership dysfunctions and my philosophies back then hurt them, and so I'm going to sit with them and talk to them and see where that goes, because I feel I need to do that. And if you're one of those people that got hurt by me and you need me to do that, I certainly will get on a plane, come see you if you think that needs to happen, because I don't want to have things out there. I don't want that to happen. But I also know that there are some arrows pointed at me, and there are some things that people are saying. And so I want to address one of them publicly because I feel like I need to do this. This is really embarrassing. But when I was married for 2 years to my current wife, Rachel, I made it clear in the book that, we were having, we first 2 years of our marriage were rocky and pretty rough, and so and primarily because of me. I was drinking, and I was still going through all the emotional stuff of the divorce, and there was kid drama and stuff going on, and so I wasn't myself. I wasn't a good guy, and so one time when I was in Omaha on a trip, my Rachel and I had gotten into a fight, and before I left, and then I was out in Omaha. We lived in Colorado at the time. I ended up having some friends over at this bar, and we were all hanging out. And at this bar at the hotel that I was staying at, we were drinking and having a good time and a lot of laughs, and it was fun. But then towards the end, one girl stayed just because we just were talking and all that, and she was pretty inebriated. We were drinking shots of Jameson, which is never good for me. I don't drink anymore, but and primarily for this reason, because bad things like this happen when you drink. But we ended up, she ended up coming up to my room because she couldn't drive home, which was a mistake. And I want to make something clear: nothing happened, but I tried to kiss her. I was pretty drunk, and she did nothing to make that happen. She wasn't flirting with me. There was nothing like that. It was all 100% me. And again, nothing happened. We didn't end up sleeping together, or we didn't even kiss, but it was wrong. The whole thing was wrong. She was in her 30s. She was, she had a kid and that kind of stuff. So it wasn't like she was a kid in my youth group, but at one point she was a kid in my youth group back when she was, in high school. And so I know I meant a lot to her, and I know that that had to have disappointed her and disillusioned her quite a bit. And so I am really sorry about that. I hate that I have to get on here and say this stuff. And it's just, I can't get on here and say I want people to be honest and own their sin and own their problems if I'm not willing to do it myself. So I know that was hanging out there, and there was some rumors going around. So I'm just going to dispel the rumors and tell everything, tell what happened. And so that's what happened. And so I also want to say this, that I'm not the same guy. Like I think, some of the stuff we're calling out on this podcast is people who have repetitive sin. They keep doing the same things. And when they get confronted, they don't change. They make excuses and they cover it up, and they won't own what they did. I'm telling you right now, I owned it immediately. As soon as that happened with that girl, I've tried several times to talk to her. We have talked, texted over the phone and things like that. And I've tried to set up times with her to say that I was sorry. But also, what the most important thing I've done is gotten better as a human. Like I'm not the same guy. I don't drink anymore. My wife and I went to counseling and worked on some of our issues, which had a lot to do with me. And I've made that commitment to myself and to the people that I love to try and get better. And that's all you can really ask. We're all going to make mistakes. We're all going to do things that we regret, but you can't make excuses for them, which I am not. And you can't stay the same, which I am not. And so I'm trying to move forward with that. And that's really what this podcast today is about. It's about the fact that I don't really, I think Brian and I both are on the same page with this. I don't have a problem with pastors sinning. I don't. I know they're going to, because I know they're human. You don't get some badge, the day you decide you're going to be a pastor, that you're not going to, sin anymore. You're going to sin. My problem always has been, in all the ministries I've been involved with, is the cover up, is the pretension, the idea that I'm going to present to people out there that my world's perfect, and I don't need to come clean with my stuff. And so that's the problem I have with sin, with people in the ministry, is that it's the cover up. It's not the sin itself. It's that idea that they're going to cover it up. So that's what we're going to talk about today. And Brian, I'm going to give you a chance just to kind of pipe in there and say, just reflect on what I just said about my situation. If you want to, you don't have to, whatever you want to do. I need to drink
Sure,
water. That's what I'm doing.
sure. So, a little context. I've known Mike for a long time. I would say our friendship is probably kind of probably began just a couple of years ago. I mean, to the place where we were, I would say, yeah, Mike is a good friend of mine. But I've known him for a long time, watched his life, and he the same with me. And I can just attest that Mike Donahue is not the same person today that he was all those years ago when we were in church together. Not to say he was a bad person. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that he's grown, he's changed, he's lived life, he's reacted to some of those changes. He's gone through a lot of stuff. Read the book. You will see it. You'll see his progression if you read the book. And please, I would just ask anyone before you hop on social media or whatever, just read the book. And if you can't afford the book, get a hold of one of us. We'll get you one.
That's true.
But just read the book and then make your judgment. But as Mike said, there isn't probably a day go by that any human being does something that they wish they hadn't have done. Now, I'm not saying that we've done like these terrible abusive things to people, but we learn, we grow, we become better people. I've been married for 40 years, and that's taken a lot of work. I've had to grow and become a better husband, a better friend. I have 4 children. I've had to learn to be a better father. The the key point is we look and we reflect upon our lives and we look at where we were. It's like, where are we now? How do we get here? And are we doing the work to continue to be, I hate to use the word better because that's sort of an achievement kind of word, but I think you'll understand, to be better humans, to be people who love more, who value people better, all of those kinds of things.
Yeah. So on this idea that, thank you, Brian. On this idea that pastors shouldn't sin, or they set themselves up to to basically to cover up what they've done wrong instead of owning it. I think that's pretty universal, and a lot
Yeah.
of the I don't know, the feedback I've gotten or complaints I've gotten from people is that they really don't like that idea that there's a separation between these people that say, "Oh, I'm holy and I'm untouchable," but we all know we're not stupid people. We all know that there are things that they fall short on too, and then sometimes they use that positioning that they have, that holier than thou, living in my ivory tower position, to deflect some of the things that they do wrong. Instead of, it's like gaslighting. They're going to turn it around and say, well, look, I'm the pastor. You don't have a right to confront me. You don't have a right to say, these things about me because I'm in this position. And I think that really is disillusioning to people, because I don't think they're asking for perfection. I think they're asking for honesty.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think there's actually a couple dimensions of that. I think in some ways that the people who attend churches and support ministers can sometimes place unreasonable expectations on them, and can be very harsh when someone like that fails. And so as I think in some of those situations, the ministers feel like they have to live up to this standard of perfection that really no human being should be expected to stand up to. I think that's a part of it. In my experience, what I've seen, however, is that there's also a very profound effort on people in those positions' part to cultivate that ethos, that persona, that they are indeed they're set apart. They're something different. They're not like the rest of us because they've chosen this career. And in that way, I think in some ways they build their own birdcage, right? They build their own jail, because once you start down that road, you have to maintain that. And as
Right.
we've mentioned, it's really difficult for we're all mortal human beings, right? And it's very difficult to maintain that in truth. I mean, obviously you can create that illusion, but it's not true. It's just an illusion.
Right. And I think it's that it goes back to a lot of, the fact that pastors are micro celebrities in their town and in
Mm-hmm.
their communities, in their church communities.
Yeah,
And, it's like they do have paparazzi running around
yeah,
wanting to expose things. And it is, I was a pastor and I had pastors' kids, and I remember feeling, wanting to protect them from these people that just want trophies. They want to see perfection. And my leaders, the people that were in my youth groups, that I didn't like that either. That that they didn't let them process. And I think that's really what I want in a pastor and what I want in a leader is I want to see you process life. I want to see
Yeah.
you have a bad day and get up again. I want to see you um, make a mistake and then let me see how you handle that mistake. I don't want you to put a bow on it and be all perfect. I want to see the process. I want to know what you did, how you felt, what was going on in your life when you attempted to do these things, and how did you handle it? Who did you go to? What did you say? Because that helps me. That helps me as the person in the congregation going, oh, okay, he does that too. I can take steps, you know. But there seems to be this, like, again, micro celebrity status that makes them untouchable. And it's not good because we don't know the process. We don't get to watch you live your life. And even in the Bible, Paul said, you know, I not only shared my truth with you, but I shared my life. I think what he was saying is you got a front row seat to who I am and how I handle life. That's discipleship. That's mentorship. Not you standing up there with the greatest hits, right? You know, you get your greatest hits, you get your greatest sermons, you get your greatest behavior in front of me, and that's your greatest hits. And I get to go, oh, I get to follow that. No, I want to see you be angry at your wife sometimes. I want to see you lose it with your kids. I want to see how you handle that and how you get up again and make decisions, because that to me is mentorship. That to me I can follow. Is that too much to ask?
It's interesting because if you know anything about the Bible and anything about Bible stories and any of the accounts, Old Testament and New, especially, I mean, well, outside of Jesus, um, all of the main players are rife with weaknesses. They are rife with failures. Their history is littered with them, you know,
Yeah.
and um, it's really. I mean, if you just take a look at the 12 disciples in the Bible, it's like, wow, what a rogues gallery, right? What a bunch of
Band of
knuckleheads,
yeah.
you know, and it really paints a picture of the emphasis isn't on your perfection. It isn't on your purity. It's about your intention and your heart. The metaphor I think of a lot of times is I think about if you've ever been to the ocean and you've seen or a big lake and you'll see people who anchor their boats, you know, out a ways, not at a dock, and they'll row like a dinghy or something out to that, and they'll moor it to the mooring that the boat is normally on. And if you watch the wind blow, the wind will blow and that boat could be blown in any particular direction, but the front of that boat is always pointing back to that mooring.
Right.
And that's the metaphor I think of. It's like, okay, is my life pointed in the right direction?
Right.
That is what's important to me, you know. And as I look at people who are asking me for their trust, that's one of the most important things. Like, what direction is their life pointed in?
Right.
Is it pointed in, you know, trying to convince me that there's somebody they're not, or are they just people who, just like me, are just, you know, they put their shoes on every day and um, you know, they meet the world with the best of what they have, and when they fail, they get up the next day and they meet the world with the best of what they have.
Right. Right. I think, and it comes down to motive. You know, it's like,
Yep.
what is your motive? If we're talking about ministries and talking about ministers and people who, you know, are propagating the gospel or standing up and presenting a truth, the most amazing truth in the world, that God loves us no matter what. What is your motive in doing that? Are you trying to, you know, be the morality police of the world? Are you trying to um, you build a kingdom to yourself? You know,
Right.
that's really important to know, because motive is what we're going to be judged on. I mean, the judgment seat of Christ is about all the wood, hay, and stubble, all the stuff that was bad motives. You know, it might have been good things that happened. It's kind of going back to that bank robbery analogy I used at the beginning of these podcasts and in the book, is that you know, just because you gave the money to the poor doesn't mean you didn't rob a bank, right? You still have to pay the price. The motive might have been, you know, you want to help people, but you did it wrong. I mean, your true motive was you robbed somebody to get there. And so, you know, again, we've been talking about this particular person, woman that has been an important player in all this in my life and in your life, because we both worked with her. Somebody had pushed back on one of the social media um, platforms. They said, well, it seems like you're just picking on a 75-year-old woman. And I just started to laugh at that, because I was like, first of all, if you met her, this person
Uh,
probably hasn't, but I mean, I don't want it to be about hurting this person, but I what I want to say is, if we're going to talk about age and vulnerability, let's talk about the age and vulnerability of the children that were hurt,
right,
right? Like, I'm sorry that she's older and fragile now, but she's still doing these things, and she's still talking about them, and actually we have it on record of her mentoring other people to do this, to hide the sin of people that could potentially hurt children. And so we got to talk about those ages and that vulnerability, right? Joe
right,
Paterno's statue came down in Penn State when he was in his 80s, not because he molested children or hurt children, but is because he allegedly knew about it and didn't do anything about it.
right.
And that's this situation. Is there are children on the other side of this 75-year-old woman that could end up getting hurt. And so, yeah, I kind of feel an obligation to protect them. And I'm not going to just look the other way because of her age. I think that's ignorant. And so I'm calling that out only because these children are potential potential victims.
Yeah, you mentioned at the beginning, um, we're not talking about people who stumble and make a mistake and own it and move on from that and do the work that they need to do to, move them in a better direction and make sure that they don't, make that same mistake again. I mean, we all do that. We're really talking at some level about people who refuse to see the harm that they're doing, both to themselves and other people, and just continue down that path in a way that appears, no one knows the motives of someone else's heart, but appears to be very um, purposeful. Part of the MO. It's this particular person. I've watched what she does from afar over the years get more and more sophisticated in the wrong kind of way.
Right.
Um,
We were with her back in the 80s, and
yeah,
this has gotten worse. It really has, in my opinion. This is totally my opinion, but the stories from what I was involved back in the 80s and then into the 90s were bad. But the stuff I'm reading about and the personal stories that are coming back to me from individuals that have reached out to me have been awful. I mean, like, and repetitive and over and over, and unbelievable stories.
right.
So
And it's interesting too because you look at some of the people who came along behind her, some of her disciples that became practitioners, and I can think of one particular instance a couple of months ago where I talked to someone who was in leadership, in authority, when one of the instances that Mike details in the book occurred. And it happened in the school that I taught in, and I happened to be teaching at that time. And um, I arranged a phone call with him and said, "Hey, look, this is what I know from talking to numerous people. Um, tell me what you know. Tell me what you saw at that time. Tell me what happened." And um, what I wanted to hear was, "Yeah, that was really bad. We made some bad decisions. We're sorry. We've learned. We've grown from that. We're going to do everything we can do to make it right," and then see them do everything that they could do to make it right. And we'll just say for now that I saw something far less than that. And that's the difference. If the former had happened, I would have been okay. You know what?
it
It
happens.
sucks that it happened, but that's the right attitude. But that is not what I heard. And that's just part of the MO when people get so caught up in that. I'm a step above every other every other person. I've got, I've got this title, Minister Bob, and
Yeah.
you have to maintain that. That's the fallout of that kind of a thing.
Yeah. So just to wrap this up, I want to just say to those of you that are out there that have watched some of these things and you were made to feel guilty because you were calling things out, you were seeing things, and you called them out, and you got it got turned around on you, or you got ignored. You were doing the right thing. You know,
Yeah.
the messenger is gonna get shot.
Yep.
There's been people that since I've released the book have come to me and said, I wanted to say some things, but I knew I was going to get stuff flung back at me. Today, my pastor was talking about Moses and the burning bush, and he was talking about how when God was calling Moses to do something great for him, Moses gave these excuses. And one of the things that Moses had in the back of his head is that he made a mistake. He killed an Egyptian, so he had that. Like, why are you going to use me, God? I'm a mess. I've done bad things, and God restored him to, like, it doesn't. That we're not going to focus on your mistake because you owned the mistake. And I think that's the difference, is if they do own the mistake, you know, that's okay. Then we can move on. We can go on. Like you said earlier, Brian, the Bible, especially the Old Testament with David, with Moses. I mean, there's so many examples of people, Noah, who made mistakes, did bad things, um, but their repentant heart was what God wanted to see, and then he was able to use them again. And so when you out there have called out these things, and you have tried to say what you saw, and it turned around you, I'm really sorry. I'm sorry they did that.
Yeah.
And um and I get it. I get why they did it, and I get why you got hurt by that. But that was never God's intention. He was not wanting. That was not him saying, "Go away, don't talk about truth." That was their deflection, and that was their
Right.
way of not owning it. And again, I'm going to say this one more time. I'm not trying to have false humility here. I'm trying to be very real about my own sin. I'm a sinner. I'm not a superhuman. I don't have a cape. You don't see a cape behind me. I'm just a guy that's trying to live life. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done things I'm not proud of, and I'm willing to own them. I'm not going to stew in them, and I'm not going to let them keep me back from being the man that God wants me to be and doing the things that he wants. I'm not going on a shelf because I made a mistake. That's shame. That's walking in shame. That's walking in guilt. I'm not walking in guilt. I made those mistakes. I'll own those mistakes, but I'm moving on because today's a new day and tomorrow's a new day, and I'm gonna go on with those days. And that's what you need to do. Some of you that are out there right now that are you've been on this, you put yourself on the shelf because they made you feel bad. They made you feel like you did something wrong. Get
Yep.
off that shelf. Get off that shelf. Get
Yep.
back to what God wants you to do and who he wants you to be, because that's the most important thing. And that's the thing that matters. On that note,
That's a good word.
good way to
Can't
stop.
argue.
All right, those
So
of you that have not got the book yet, this is it. Talking about Groomed, and we have all our Instagram stuff and um, Facebook stuff, and my website is Groomed.Connect. My website actually is Mike Donahue connects.com. And so get on there and get a hold of us, and we'll keep these podcasts going. And if you have any ideas for podcasts, and let us know. We're going to be bringing on some guests and some other people that have had some shared experiences. So I look forward to getting to know you guys. Would love to have your feedback. Mike Donahue, my email address is miked@value-up.org, and I'll share some stuff with Brian if you want to reach out to him. There's ways to do that as well. So thank you guys so much, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
see ya.
Bye-bye.